Welcome to Inside Latin America and to Mexico City, the birthplace of the modern muralist movement. Over a century ago, just after the Mexican Revolution, renowned artists such as Diego Rivera and David Alfaro Siqueiros were commissioned to paint hundreds of murals like these, transforming public walls into giant canvases that explored inequality, indigenous identity, and the social struggles of their time. While the movement was state-sponsored, many artists still found ways to challenge inequality and injustice. In doing so, they helped establish public walls as spaces for political and social expression, a legacy that influenced generations of street artists, not just in Mexico, but across Latin America.
I'm Teresa Bo in Buenos Aires, where street art has long been used to preserve Argentina's collective memory and demand for justice. This stencil art, for example, is the powerful symbol of the mothers of Plaza de Mayo, the women who in the 1970s and 80s challenged the military dictatorship in Argentina in the search of their missing children. Over the years, this type of art has been used to demand social justice, especially during Argentina's recurrent economic crisis. Today, it's also being used to protest against the policies of far-right President Javier Milei.
And I'm Lucia Newman in Chile's port city of Valparaiso, once an enclave, a bohemian enclave for artists from all over Latin America. But more recently, its streets and its walls have become canvases to showcase working-class people and their struggles for pride and dignity. But first we go back to Julia Galeano in Mexico, where the streets are being used by artists to tell stories, stories that many in power would rather be made invisible.
Relatives of Mexico's disappeared want you to see these faces. They've commissioned street artists across the country to paint them on public walls. They hope the murals might help bring their loved ones home, or at the very least, keep Mexico's crisis of disappearances visible. For more than 100 years, Mexican walls have been used to highlight the country's hardest realities.
Mexico has a deep respect for muralism, precisely because of the social, political, and even economic issues it has addressed since the beginning of the 20th century. A mural represents that, the unity, the voice of these social problems expressed by an urban artist.
Then it was a post-revolutionary Mexico coming to terms with the social effects of nearly a decade of war. Today, it's the killing of women and girls and disappearances. More than 130,000 people have been reported missing in Mexico after decades of war against drug cartels. For artist Dweck, that reality is personal. He was at the forefront of the street art movement here even before his sister Fanny disappeared over a year ago. He has now painted more than 10 murals of her across the Mexican capital.
It's desperation in the face of a social problem we're experiencing firsthand. Many times I use art as a way of asking society, asking the government for help, to keep my sister's case moving forward and to find out what happened to her.
These murals can't tell families where their loved ones are, but they can make sure their disappearances remain part of the public conversation. And in a country where relatives say the government has repeatedly failed to find their missing family members, too often dismissing the pain of those left behind, that may be their most important role.
For decades, Buenos Aires has been an open-air gallery where the walls tell the stories of Argentina's struggles, hope, and political divisions. As President Javier Milei pushes for sweeping economic reforms and slashes public spending, artists and activists are on the streets to mobilize public debate.
In the middle of chants and banners, Stencilvania likes to turn the walls of Buenos Aires into a canvas of political messages.
We use public space to express ourselves, what we think, what we denounce. It's what brings us together, what connects us.
This time, the message is against President Javier Milei's attempts to allow the sale of land to foreigners and foreign companies. Stencilvania says Milei is trying to sell the country's natural resources and strategic assets.
This type of art became very popular after the economic collapse of 2001, where artists say that they needed inexpensive stencils to be able to create fast and easy to reproduce images. Since then, it has become the visual language of protest and urban culture.
Gigi was a graphic designer in 2001. He wants his real name to remain anonymous. He says Argentina's 2001 economic crisis, which left a lasting mark on an entire generation, and the September 11 attacks on New York convinced him that art could become a powerful form of protest, amplifying a message against the political establishment in Argentina and beyond. Gigi helped create the image of George Bush with Mickey Mouse ears that was reproduced in several countries.
It's so easy. With a cutter and an X-ray or a piece of cardboard, you can create an image and go out and do it fast over 500 times. That's what we did, and our message went around the world.
Artists say what's crucial is to keep it simple and rely on bold shapes and easy colors. But Stencilvania likes to take her art a bit further. She likes to reproduce images of football star Diego Maradona and also members of indigenous communities in Argentina.
Sometimes when I'm painting on the streets and I'm not afraid of being stopped, people come and tell me that what I'm doing is beautiful. And that's special, to make something that people like, and it's also politically charged.
Governments come and go, and the slogans change. For Buenos Aires stencil artists, the goal is to leave behind an idea that spreads from wall to wall and lingers long after the paint has dried.
Thanks, Teresa. Valparaiso is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, known among other things for its funiculars, which are more than 100 years old, among the oldest urban funiculars in the world. But the city is also countering now a massive graffiti movement carried out mainly by anarchists. Now, a mural project is trying to counter that with the help of the community, using an ideological twist of its own. Once the pride of Chile, this seaport city of 42 hills and historic architecture is not the gem it once was. Its streets are covered with graffiti, often on buildings that clearly need repair. But it's undergoing a makeover that's not simply decorative. Valparaiso in Colors is a project that aims to preserve cultural memory, reclaim public spaces, and showcase the value of working-class men and women. The project's founder, Horacio Silva, says many have become ashamed of their origins and their neighborhoods.
For example, would you be able to go deep into the ocean at daybreak, risk your life and fish so we can all eat it afterwards? I can't, but he could, and that has value, and that's what we underscore in these murals.
Like the patriarch of hundreds of fishermen who make their living here, but who are often rendered invisible. Or the boy who used to deliver milk on a donkey on what's still called Milkman's Hill. Or the bus driver. Isabel Flores tells us the murals are making a difference.
Valparaiso was going to the dogs. Tito, the pearl of the Pacific, was dying, but it's coming back to life.
The community has the last word about the themes and is often involved in the execution, like this group of women creating a different type of mural with mosaics. Their project was inspired by Rio de Janeiro's famous Lapa Steps. This neighborhood is called Ocean Garden, and in fact all the streets are named after oceanic species, but you would never know it, even though the Pacific Ocean is just 100 meters in front of me. And that's why people in the community decided to use their mosaics and this enormous public space to pay homage to the sea, sending a wider message about the value of what is made by and for the community.
And as we've seen in Valparaiso, street art is about much more than just color on a wall. It shapes how communities see themselves. We spoke to artist and curator Marco Guagnelli about the role that street art plays in cities across Latin America.
I think that street art has a very interesting component in Latin America that is appropriating the streets, and not just the streets, but the architecture. Marginalized communities or people who live in the peripheries, they feel that they don't have the right of living in a beautiful place. And it's very interesting that as soon as these neighborhoods start to claim their own spaces, their own identity through color and art in the streets, then is when institutions start to look at them.
How would you describe then the relationship between governments and street art and street artists in this region?
I think most of the times the graffiti or street art works with some rejection of the government. In a democracy, it's very important that these spaces outside of the funding of the art market and the government exist.
Specifically, when we're talking about Mexico, what are the social issues that are most prominent in the street art that we're seeing?
The best example is the feminist movement. All these women went and graffitied the monuments, claiming for obviously feminicide and arguing that government pay more attention of women that has been killed for so many years.
So where is the line there, or where do you think the line is between vandalism and street art?
Whole Latin America have lived so many social inequalities that I will say the biggest aspect on this appropriating the streets through graffiti is not with aesthetic purposes, but it's more like a socio-political act. If you paint a wall and it's private property, the next day could be painted over with white color, and then the next day could be again graffiti.
So in that sense, you see street art more as a newspaper rather than a history book.
Yeah, but I think the newspaper has a very straightforward aspect. Here is more abstract, and it can take so many different shapes. It doesn't have a specific language, and the language evolves with different problems and with different people.
Thank you so much. A living art form that tells the stories of communities, resilience, and the shared experiences that shape everyday life for millions in cities across this region. Thanks for watching Inside Latin America. Now back to Doha with more news.